Mommy, if we eat today, will we starve tomorrow? The Hell's Angel heart shattered in silence before the waitress reached their table, before the engines outside stopped ticking in the cold, before anyone understood what a child's whisper could do to a grown man's soul. A little girl asked a question about tomorrow, and a Hell's Angel felt something inside him break. The diner sat on the edge of a frozen highway outside Bozeman where the mountains looked close enough to touch, but felt impossibly far from help. It was late afternoon, though the sky had already turned the color of steel. The neon sign in the window buzzed softly, flickering between open and something that looked like surrender. Inside, the heat worked hard but never quite won. At the corner booth near the window sat Emily Carter. Her coat stayed on, so did her daughters. Across from her were Ava and Sophie, 7 years old, born minutes apart, identical in face but not in worry. Ava chewed her lip when she was nervous. Sophie folded her napkin into careful squares like she could organize fear if she tried hard enough. Emily held the menu in both hands, though she had memorized it weeks ago, not the food. The prices. She had counted the cash in her wallet 4 times before walking in, once in the car, once at the door, twice after sitting down. $32.70, enough for 1 meal, maybe 2 if they skipped drinks. Outside, 3 motorcycles rolled into the gravel lot, engines loud against the quiet winter air. The sound vibrated through the glass before it faded into ticking metal and settling silence. Emily didn't look up, but the entire diner did. Leather jackets, heavy boots, a patch stitched bold across their backs, the Hell's Angels, conversations dimmed, a fork paused midair. Even the jukebox seemed to hesitate before continuing its old country song. Ava leaned closer to her mother. "Mommy," she whispered. Emily reached across the table and covered both small hands with hers. "It's okay," she said softly, but she wasn't sure if she meant the bikers or tomorrow. Life hadn't collapsed all at once for Emily Carter. It had unraveled slowly. First came the factory closure, 12 years of steady work gone in a single meeting with fluorescent lights and folded arms. Then came the medical bills after her husband, Daniel, suffered a stroke at 36. Not fatal, just permanent enough to change everything. He couldn't return to construction. Insurance covered some of it. Some didn't mean enough. Savings thinned, then vanished. Daniel tried to stay strong for the girls, tried to smile through speech therapy and shaking hands. But strength costs energy, and illness takes more than it gives back. 3 months ago, the small rental house became too expensive. They moved into a single extended-stay motel room near the highway, 2 beds, a microwave, a view of trucks coming and going. The girls thought it was temporary. Emily let them think that. Back in the diner, steam rose from a single plate, a turkey dinner special meant for 1 but stretched for 3. Emily had asked for an extra plate and smiled like it was casual. The waitress didn't ask questions. Ava broke her portion in half before eating. Sophie drank water slowly, as if making it last made the meal last too. Across the room, one of the bikers noticed. His name was Logan Mercer. Mid-40s, broad shoulders, a beard threaded with early gray. A man most people stepped away from before he ever spoke. He had grown up in a trailer park outside Spokane. He knew what careful eating looked like. He watched the mother, the way she pretended not to be hungry, the way she smiled too quickly. He told himself to mind his own business. That had always been easier, until he heard the whisper. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't meant for anyone else. Ava leaned toward her mother, eyes serious in a way no 7-year-old's eyes should be. "Mommy, if we eat today, will we starve tomorrow?" The words were simple, honest, logic wrapped in fear. Emily froze. Her hand stopped halfway to her mouth. Her breath caught but made no sound. For 1 fragile second, she forgot how to answer. Because the question wasn't about food, it was about safety. It was about whether tomorrow could be trusted. Sophie looked between them, waiting for reassurance, waiting for something solid. Behind them, Ridge stopped chewing. The fork in his hand hovered in the air. The diner grew quieter than before, not because everyone heard the words clearly, but because something in the air shifted. Ridge had asked that same question once. He was 8. His mother had worked 2 jobs and still counted coins on the kitchen counter. He remembered watching her slide her portion onto his plate. "I ate earlier," she'd say. She hadn't. He knew it even then. Back in the present, Ridge felt that memory move through him like a crack spreading across glass. Emily swallowed. "We're okay," she said finally. Her voice was soft, too soft. Ava nodded, but she didn't look convinced. And Ridge knew the difference between comfort and truth. He set his fork down, slowly, deliberately. Across the table, one of the younger bikers glanced at him. "You good?" the man asked quietly. Ridge didn't answer. He was listening to something louder than engines, a promise he once made to himself. "If I ever have enough, I won't ignore it." He pushed his chair back. The scrape against tile echoed. Emily stiffened instantly. Fear moved through her shoulders before she could stop it. She pulled both girls a little closer. And Ridge felt that too. Not hatred, not judgment, just instinct. He took one step toward their table, and the entire diner held its breath. From Emily's view, he was enormous. Leather vest, heavy boots, the red and white patch unmistakable. She didn't think about kindness. She thought about protection. Her arm tightened around her daughter's. "It's okay," she whispered to them again, though her heart was pounding so loud she wondered if they could hear it. Ridge stopped beside their booth. Up close, he could see tear tracks drying against Emily's cheeks. He could see the careful way the girls sat, small, controlled, trying not to take up too much space. That hurt more than the question. He cleared his throat gently, not aggressively, just enough to speak. "Ma'am," he said, voice low but steady. "You mind if I ask you something?" Emily looked up. Her eyes weren't angry, they were exhausted. "Yes." He hesitated. This wasn't his world, not really. He knew fights, roads, brotherhood, loyalty. He didn't know how to approach a hungry child without making it worse, so he told the truth. "I heard what your little girl asked." Emily's face flushed. Embarrassment arrived before tears did. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "She didn't mean." "She meant it," Ridge replied softly. Silence stretched. Ava stared at him, not with fear now, with curiosity. Ridge crouched slightly so he wasn't towering over them. "When I was about your age," he said, looking at Ava, "I asked my mom the same thing." Emily blinked. The tension shifted. Not gone, but different. "I remember thinking," he continued, "that if I ate too much tonight, tomorrow wouldn't come with anything." Ava tilted her head. "Did it?" He gave the smallest smile. "Sometimes no, sometimes yes." Emily didn't know what was happening. Was this pity? Was this humiliation? Or something else? Behind Ridge, the other bikers watched carefully, waiting. He stood slowly, then reached into his vest pocket. Emily's breath caught again, but he didn't pull out anything threatening. He pulled out his wallet and placed it gently on the table. "Order whatever you want," he said, "for tonight and tomorrow." The diner didn't move, didn't breathe, and Emily stared at the worn leather wallet like it might disappear if she blinked. "I can't accept that," Emily said immediately. Pride rose before gratitude could. "We're fine." Ridge nodded once. "I know," he said. The words weren't sarcastic, they were respectful, but he didn't pick the wallet back up. Behind him, another biker, older, quieter, stood as well, then another, without speeches, without drama. They walked to the counter. The waitress looked confused. Ridge turned slightly toward her. "Put their meal on our tab," he said, "and anything they need for the road." The waitress blinked. "For the road?" Ridge glanced back at Emily. "You traveling?" She hesitated, then nodded once. Just figuring things out. He understood that language. It meant nowhere stable yet. Within minutes, takeout containers were being packed. Extra sandwiches, pie slices, hot cocoa in sealed cups. Enough food to last days if stretched carefully. Ava watched it all like it was magic. Sophie's napkin squares fell apart in her hands. Emily's eyes filled, but this time she didn't wipe them away. "Why?" she asked finally. Ridge paused. "Because hunger leaves fingerprints. Because he remembered. Because sometimes the toughest hearts carry the softest scars." But he didn't say any of that. He simply answered, "Because no kid should plan their hunger." Silence wrapped around the booth. Not heavy now, warm. Outside, the snow began to fall, soft, steady. When the food was packed and the bill was paid, Ridge stepped back. He didn't ask for thanks, didn't wait for praise. He just gave Ava a small nod. "Eat tonight," he said gently. "Tomorrow will figure itself out." For the first time that day, Emily believed it might. And as the bikers walked out into the cold Montana evening, engines roaring back to life, something inside Ridge felt lighter than it had in years. But the story wasn't over, because tomorrow was still waiting, and sometimes kindness circles back in ways no one expects. The motorcycles didn't leave right away. They idled in the snow-covered lot, engines rumbling low like distant thunder. Inside the diner, warmth lingered in a way it hadn't before, not because of the heaters, but because something unspoken had shifted. Emily packed the containers slowly. Ava kept peeking toward the window. "Are they bad guys?" she whispered. Emily followed her daughter's gaze. The men outside stood beside their bikes, heads close together, speaking in low tones. "I don't think so," Emily answered carefully. "I think sometimes people just look louder than they are." Across the lot, Ridge leaned against his bike, staring at the diner window. He could see the girls' silhouettes through the glass. One of the younger bikers, Tyler, stepped beside him. "You know people are gonna talk," Tyler said. "Angels playing charity." Ridge shrugged. "Let them." Tyler studied him. "This about something else." Ridge didn't answer right away. Snow landed on his shoulders, melting into dark leather. "When I was 9, Ridge said finally, "a man paid for our groceries, didn't say much, just left before my mom could thank him." Tyler listened. "I spent years wondering why he did it," Ridge continued. "Couldn't figure out what he saw in us worth saving." "And now?" Tyler asked. Ridge's jaw tightened slightly. "Now I know he wasn't saving us, he was remembering himself." Inside the diner, Emily stood. She gathered the bags, steady but unsure. This kindness felt fragile, temporary, like snow that could disappear by morning. As she stepped toward the door, Ridge straightened. The bell above the entrance rang softly as she came outside. The cold hit immediately. "Thank you," she said, voice clear but humble. "I don't know how to repay." "You don't," Ridge interrupted gently. He reached into his vest again, slower this time. Emily's heart skipped, but she didn't step back. He pulled out a small card, not a threat, a phone number. "If you need work," he said, "real work, there's a garage 2 towns over. My friend owns it. Tell him I sent you." Emily blinked. "You don't even know me." Ridge gave a faint, tired smile. "I know enough." Snow fell heavier now. For the first time in months, tomorrow didn't feel like an empty word. But neither of them knew how much tomorrow would test that fragile hope. The motel room smelled faintly of detergent and old carpet. 2 beds, 1 flickering lamp, a heater that rattled like it was arguing with itself. Emily spread the food across the small table as if laying out treasure. Ava and Sophie sat cross-legged on one bed, watching. "Are we saving some?" Sophie asked quietly. Emily paused. The old instinct rose again, divide, ration, calculate. Then she remembered Ridge's voice. No kid should plan their hunger. "We're eating," she said firmly, "all of it." The girls didn't cheer. They simply smiled in relief. That hurt more than excitement ever could. Later that night, after the girls fell asleep, Emily sat by the window with the small card in her hand. Logan Mercer, a number beneath it. Was it pride that stopped her from calling, or fear of hope? She turned the card over. On the back, in rough handwriting, were 3 words: "Everyone needs backup." Emily exhaled slowly. Across town, Ridge sat alone at a small bar that barely filled half its stools. The other bikers had moved on, headed toward their next stop. He stayed, not because he had to, because something inside him felt unfinished. The bartender, an older woman named June, wiped a glass slowly. "You look like you lost a fight," she said. "Maybe I did," Ridge replied. "With who?" He thought about the girl's question. With time. With memory, with the version of himself that stopped feeling things. "You ever think," he asked June, "that maybe we spend half our lives building armor, and the other half realizing we can't breathe inside it?" June studied him carefully. "Armor keeps you alive," she said. "Yeah," Ridge replied quietly, "but it doesn't let you live." Outside, snow continued to fall. And somewhere in that quiet Montana night, 2 very different lives hovered on the edge of change. But morning was coming, and with it, a test neither of them expected. The call came before sunrise. Emily stared at her phone, heart pounding. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello." Silence for half a second, then a familiar low voice. "You call yet?" Ridge asked. Emily blinked. "You waited. Figured you might talk yourself out of it." She almost had. The garage owner, Sam Callahan, answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was rough but not unkind. "You a friend of Mercer S?" "I think so," Emily replied. There was a pause. "He doesn't hand out my number to just anyone." That sentence alone felt like a door opening. By mid-morning, Emily stood outside Callahan Auto Repair, staring at a building that smelled of oil and second chances. Sam was tall, weathered, hands stained permanently dark. You know bookkeeping? He asked. Yes. You show up on time? Yes. You quitting when it gets hard? She shook her head. Sam studied her face, not the tiredness, but the determination beneath it. You start Monday. Emily's breath caught. Really? Mercer doesn't vouch twice. Across town, Rich was already back on the highway. Engines loud, wind sharp against his face. But for the first time in years, the sound didn't feel like escape. It felt like movement. His phone buzzed in his pocket at a stoplight. A single text. He hired me. Ridge stared at the message longer than necessary. Then typed back only 3 words. Told you so. Beneath the leather, beneath the patch, beneath the miles of road, something softer had begun to breathe again. And still, the real turning point hadn't happened yet. Because not all storms arrive with snow. Some arrive with memory. And Ridge was about to face his. 3 weeks passed. Emily worked 6 days a week at the garage. Numbers made sense to her. Order made sense. The girls started school nearby. The motel room felt less temporary, not permanent, but steadier. Then one afternoon, as Emily balanced invoices at the front desk, the garage door opened. The engine sound was unmistakable. She looked up. Ridge removed his helmet slowly. For a second, neither of them spoke. "You're early," she said softly, passing through. Sam glanced between them, then wisely disappeared into the back. Ava and Sophie were sitting at a small desk in the corner doing homework. When they saw Ridge, their faces lit up. "You came back," Ava said. "Guess I did." He stepped inside fully. The smell of motor oil wrapped around him, but something about the space felt warmer than the open road. Emily noticed the tension in his shoulders. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Ridge hesitated, then shook his head once. "Mom passed last week." The words were simple, heavy. Emily stepped closer instinctively. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "She never stopped worrying about food," he admitted. "Even after I made money, even after I could buy her anything." Grief doesn't care about success. It remembers emptiness. The girls stood quietly now, sensing the shift. Ava walked forward and hugged him without asking. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rehearsed. It was just honest. Ridge froze for half a second, then slowly placed one large hand on her back, armor cracking again. But this time, he didn't try to fix it. That evening, Emily closed the garage early. Sam didn't argue. They all drove to a small hill overlooking town. Snow had melted. The sky burned orange and gold. Ridge stood with his hands in his pockets. "She used to say," he began quietly, "that hunger teaches you 2 things, how to survive and how to notice." "Notice what?" Sophie asked. "Other hungry hearts." Emily watched him carefully. The man who walked into the diner weeks ago had carried weight like a shield. The man standing here carried it like memory. "I used to think being strong meant never needing anyone," Ridge admitted. "Turns out, strength is knowing when to show up." Ava slipped her hand into his. "Are you still sad?" she asked. "Yes," he answered honestly. "Grief doesn't arrive loudly. It settles. It waits. It shows up in small places, like the empty chair at a kitchen table, or the silence after a phone call that won't ever come again." After that evening on the hill, Ridge didn't leave town right away. He told himself it was coincidence. Weather delays, mechanical checks, nothing permanent, but the truth was simpler. He didn't want to ride away from something that finally felt steady. Over the next few days, he helped around the garage. Not because Sam needed muscle, though he did, but because Ridge needed purpose that didn't involve distance. Emily noticed how careful he was with the girls. He didn't overpromise, didn't play hero. He listened. When Ava talked about school, he listened. When Sophie worried about math, he sat beside her and worked through problems slowly, patiently, like time wasn't chasing him. One afternoon, while reorganizing an old storage room behind the garage, Ridge found a dusty metal box. Inside were faded flyers for community events long forgotten. Bake sales, fundraisers, holiday drives. He held one in his hand longer than the rest. Winter food drive, help local families. The date was 10 years old. He stared at it. That old memory stirred again, his mother counting coins, the stranger at the grocery store, a question at the diner. He walked into the main office where Emily was balancing receipts. "What would it take," he asked slowly, "to start something like this again?" Emily looked up. "Like what?" He held up the flyer. "For families who don't want their kids asking about tomorrow." She didn't answer right away, because this wasn't a one-time act of kindness. This was commitment, and commitment is heavier than generosity. You sure? She asked gently. Ridge thought about his mother, about hunger, about armor. I've spent years riding past towns, he said. Maybe it's time I stop in one. Outside, engines could be heard in the distance. Not leaving, arriving. The first meeting happened on a Tuesday night. No banners, no press, just folding chairs arranged in a rough circle inside the garage. Sam leaned against the tool cabinet. June from the bar showed up with coffee. A few townspeople came hesitantly, unsure what to expect. And then the motorcycles arrived. One by one, not loud, not aggressive, just present. Tyler walked in first, glancing around as if preparing for judgment. Instead, he found nods, cautious curiosity, space. Ridge stood in the center. "This isn't charity," he began. His voice wasn't commanding, it was steady. "It's backup." People exchanged looks. He continued, "Some of us grew up learning how to stretch one meal into two. Some of us learned to pretend we weren't hungry so someone else could eat. That doesn't leave you." Emily watched from the back, pride and something deeper warming her chest. "We're starting a food pantry," Ridge said. "No forms that make people feel small, no lectures, just shelves that don't ask questions." A woman in the circle raised her hand. "You're serious?" Ridge nodded. "Dead serious." Tyler stepped forward unexpectedly. "I'll handle deliveries," he said. "My truck's big enough." Sam added, "I've got storage space in the back." June lifted a box she had brought. "First donation," she said. It wasn't dramatic. No applause, just movement, action. Emily stepped beside Ridge quietly. "You realize," she whispered, "this changes your image." He gave a small, almost amused breath. "Maybe it changes it back." Outside, snow began to fall again, lighter this time, almost gentle. And inside a garage that once only fixed engines, something else was being rebuilt. Not machines, not reputations, but trust. Word spread slowly at first, then faster. By the second week, shelves that began half empty were lined with canned goods, bread, milk vouchers, winter coats folded carefully. No cameras, no headlines, just people showing up for each other. The first family to walk in looked exactly like Emily had weeks ago, cautious, apologetic, bracing for judgment. Instead, they were met with simple instructions. "Take what you need." A little boy, maybe 6, clutched a box of cereal like it was treasure. Ridge watched from across the room. He didn't interfere, didn't hover. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, breathing slowly. Emily joined him. "Feels different, doesn't it?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah." She studied his face. "You're not running." He looked at her then. "For the first time," he admitted, "I'm not trying to outride something." Hover and Sophie helped stack canned food nearby. They treated every item like it mattered, because to them it did. Later that afternoon, a man approached Ridge quietly. "You don't remember me," the man said. Ridge searched his face. "I used to see you around when we were kids. Trailer park off Pine Road." Ridge's chest tightened. The man smiled gently. "My mom used to send me to your place when we had extra. Said your mother was too proud to ask." Ridge blinked. He hadn't known. All those years thinking they were alone, they were. "We helped each other," the man continued. "You just didn't see it yet." Something inside Ridge shifted again. Kindness wasn't isolated. It was a chain, and sometimes you don't realize you're part of it until someone shows you the link. Spring arrived quietly in Bozeman ***. Snow melted into soft ground. The air lost its bite. The food pantry moved from the back of the garage into its own small rented space downtown. A simple sign hung above the door. "Tomorrow's table." Emily had suggested the name. Ridge pretended he didn't get emotional when he saw it printed. One evening, months after the diner, the 4 of them stood outside the new building. Ava tugged on Ridge's sleeve. "Do you think anyone will ever ask that question again?" He crouched down to her level. "Maybe," he said honestly, "but if they do, they won't ask it alone." Sophie slipped her hand into Emily's. Emily looked at Ridge, not as the biker who walked into a diner, not as the man with a heavy patch on his back, but as someone who remembered hunger and chose to answer it. "You stayed," she said softly. Ridge glanced at the open door behind him, where shelves were being stocked for the next morning. "Guess I found something worth staying for." Across the street, motorcycles lined the curb. Not as a warning, as protection, as presence. Armor hadn't disappeared. It had simply changed purpose. The same strength, a different direction. And somewhere in that quiet Montana evening, the version of Ridge who once believed he had to be hard to survive finally understood. Softness had saved him. Months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, the diner still stood at the edge of the highway. The neon sign still buzzed. The jukebox still skipped occasionally, but something felt different. At the same corner booth near the window sat Emily and the girls again. Only this time there were 3 full plates on the table, and laughter that didn't feel careful. The door opened. Heavy boots, leather creaked, but no one froze. Ridge walked in, followed by Tyler and Sam. The waitress smiled knowingly. Ava grinned wide. "Mommy," she said playfully, "if we eat all this, will we be okay tomorrow?" Emily's eyes softened. She looked around the diner, at familiar faces, at the man who once stood beside her booth with a wallet and a memory. "Yes," she said with certainty, "we will, because tomorrow wasn't a threat anymore. It was a promise built by people who refused to look away." Ridge caught Emily's gaze across the table. No grand speeches passed between them, just understanding. He sat down this time, not behind them, with them. Outside, motorcycles rested quietly in the parking lot. Inside, warmth filled the space in a way heaters never could. And somewhere between steam rising from full plates and the sound of a child's honest laughter, one truth stood firm. The hardest hearts don't break from weakness. They break when they remember. And sometimes that's how the world heals. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of someone who showed up when you needed it most, don't forget to like,